Hello class, this is your instructor Steve Rothenberg, and this is the first of 10 short video lectures, one for each lesson. This is the one for lesson 1, and it's simply designed to sort of walk through the tutorial in the text and just point out some interesting facts or some things that you may need a little bit of help with. So right now what you're looking at is what you see when you start on page 2 when you open up Microsoft Project. It's the welcome screen. If you would open a blank project, you would essentially see what you are looking at the bottom of page 2, and that simply points out some of the nomenclature, what we call things, the ribbon, the timeline. You're probably familiar with the ribbon if you've used other Microsoft products like Word or Excel, and you have a set of groups, schedule group, the font group. We refer to 3 things. We say tab, resource, group, assignments or properties, and then within the group we talk about the button, the detail, or the option, leveling options, and so forth. So every task has a different ribbon, and each ribbon has a number of groups, and each group has a number of related activities. Just going over to page 3, here they're going to be talking about opening a template, and I think I mentioned that when you were on that start screen, you can choose to open a blank project and you start from scratch, or you can choose to open a template which will be pre-filled in with the kinds of tasks that a certain project might use, and then you have a much better starting point, a lot less work. So that's what's being done on page 4, opening a template. And you'll see at the bottom of page 4 they've got an annual report preparation template. So let's see if I can find that. I'm no longer on the screen, so what I'll have to do is go to New, then I can now choose a template. And I think search online templates, so we'll do that. And annual, and see what it finds. Okay, if I double click on it, it's going to open this template, and notice I've got a sample that contains some very standard reporting options for publicly traded companies, SEC, 10K, and so forth and so on. In this class we're going to basically work with files that have already been pre-formatted, and we're going to be doing operations on them. So very often you'll be opening a file that's already got stuff in it. Moving on to page 5, again we're on Project Basics. They go a little bit more into what I just mentioned about the tabs and the ribbons and how to navigate around. The backstage area is what used to simply be called the File tab, but now when you do the when you hit the File tab, you get a number of services and options like printing, exporting. Here's your primary options for all of Microsoft Project, and there are many parameters that control how Microsoft Project behaves. We won't get into great detail. We're going to take mostly the defaults, such as durations entered in days and work is entered in hours. We could choose another option, but that would cause difficulties for working with this book, because this book, the settings are just as you see them here. At any rate, the backstage area, I'll hit that again, File, this is where you go for your services to print, save, and so forth. So that takes care of page 6. Page 7 talks about, actually the bottom of page 6, it talks about Microsoft Project's databases. And in a nutshell, if you think about it, Microsoft Project allows you to define tasks. That's one set of data. It allows you to define people and equipment. That's another database. And then when you actually assign people to tasks, you have a third database, which is sort of the intersection or the joining of the two databases. So you'll have tasks from one database attached to people from another database, and that's why Microsoft Project gives you this viewpoint that is made up of 3 databases. So that's what's going on pretty much in on page 6, page 7, and page 8. Take a look at the table at the top of page 9. It shows a number of different viewpoints of the data. You can look at the data from a calendar viewpoint, what's due on this day, that day, the next day. You can look at it in a Gantt chart, which is your standard project plan. You could look at it in terms of from your resources, from the hours they're spending, or how much they're getting paid, or what their work hours are. All of these views are based on one of those three databases, which is in the right-hand column. On to page 9, bottom of 9 and 10, there's two different ways to view a timeline. One of them is, and let's see if I can, I'm going to open up a different file which will show it a little bit better. So I'm going to, let's close this. I'll do new. And I will, let's see if I can find a file that I've already got. Let's take one with a decent looking timeline. Let's do this one. Okay, this one has a little healthier Gantt chart here, which is simply a list of all the tasks. You can, I'm going to expand this so that we can actually, if we go to the view and then we say we want to see the network diagram, you'll notice that the chart of activities is portrayed in a much a much different way. So there's basically two views to Microsoft Project. You can look at the view in terms of a network diagram, which is essentially a linked set of boxes, which each of which contains, when I mouse over it, it expands. You can see the task particulars. That's the network view. If I zoom out, you'll see the whole Gantt chart, or I'm sorry, the whole network diagram showing all of the activities. It's sort of like a flow chart. But the standard view we'll use mostly is the Gantt chart view, which allows us to, you can see the tasks are going further and further to the right in this area, and that means they're advancing in time, and the calendar is, the ruler is right here. So it's somewhat easier to tell where in time these tasks are taking place. But this is what page 9 and page 10 go through. And once you're into page 11, you're actually starting with a blank schedule, and you're going to start adding dates and tasks and so forth. And I'm going to open a blank sheet right now. Notice that a message comes up and says new tasks are created in a manually scheduled mode. There are two modes, as you'll read about, manually scheduled mode and automatically scheduled mode, or auto scheduled mode. We won't go into the details of the difference between them, but they will be very important, and when you read about them, it'll give you your first taste of what the difference is. You notice this course is called Automated Project Management, so we're going to be using the automated mode. If it was created manually scheduled project management, well, then we'd be using manual schedule. We'll talk about manual schedule, and we'll be using mostly the automatic scheduling, and you can actually change that by clicking here and just selecting the other option. But we're not told to do that yet. So as we work through page 12 and page 13, you're going to start to work with the calendars, project schedule, the calendar feature. If we go to the project tab and we look at change working time, this is where we can specify what days of the week are work days, what are the hours on those days. We can enter exceptions where we enter holidays or vacation days if it's a personal calendar, because we can have calendars for the project and we can have calendars for an individual person. And this is one of the ways that Microsoft Project allows you to have a good grasp on just how many hours of work are available in a certain date range. So that takes us through page 14, page 15. On to page 16, we're actually going to start to enter tasks, and I won't do that now. The text will have you enter tasks, enter their duration. It'll actually start to, and entering task durations is on page 18 and 19. You'll notice that when we get to page 20 and 21, they start talking about manual and automatic scheduling a little bit more, so you'll cover that. On page 22, you'll look at milestones, which are simply ways of indicating that a certain critical point is reached, and that If that milestone is delayed, then very likely that the project is going to be delayed as well, unless remedial factors are put into place some point down the line before the project's over. Onto page 23, creating summary tasks. And this is you can see this pretty well by looking at I'm going to bring up a file here which specifies it pretty well, and here I'm going to go into one of the files that we're going to use in our course. You notice that we have levels of indentation, so if I were to click here, I would collapse all of the levels. If I click once here, I can expand all of the levels, but I can also close them up too. So when I look at my skeleton project plan, I see it's made up of a main title, Don Funk music video, and it's made up of 3 phases. If I expand each one, I have subtasks into each of these summary tasks, and then even here's another summary task, which if I expand, I see it's a recurring meeting that occurs, well actually it may not be recurring, yes, occurs every Monday, except there was one day where it occurred on Tuesday, but otherwise it's 1 hour every Monday. So this level of indentation is essentially what we talk about, or what we mean when we say summary tasks, subtasks, and it's a hierarchical way, or an outline, if you will, of what the project is about and what tasks go into the project. Turning over to page 26, we're going to look at linking tasks, and that simply it can easily be seen if I close this. Let's keep that open. Narrow down the focus a little bit. These arrows, let me slide this over. These arrows that sort of stair step between the tasks mean that this task must finish before this task can start, and this task must finish before that task can start, and likewise. This little area here means there's been a split. There's no work being done on that particular day. Maybe because the person's on vacation or for some other reason. So when we talk about linking tasks, we're taking 2 tasks and deciding how they are related. You might think that, well, finish to start, where one task was finished before the other one starts, would be the normal way things work, but there are many cases where you have 2 tasks that can start at the same time. There's no reason to wait for one to finish before the other can start. In other words, they can work in parallel. So you'll see that there are, and I'm talking about page 27, there's a number of different types of relationships, and each one implies a different physical need for one being waiting till another one is finished. Sometimes 2 things have to start at the same time, or else you won't get a good result. For instance, if you're, as an example, you're mixing adhesive and it takes a certain amount of time to set, well, you better have started getting all the things that you're going to put into place that need to be glued to make sure that they're lined up, because if you start later, your adhesive might all be dried out before you get to the point where you can actually apply it. So those relationships happen all the time in software development, construction, and other endeavors as well. So we're just about at the end here. Page 26 talks about linking. We talk about milestones. Page 28 and 29, we talk about how we can add information to a task, and that's quite simple. If you want to find out metadata about a task, all you have to do is double click on it, and it brings up a task information dialog, and each of these tabs has a different set of information. What resources, advanced options like whether the task must start as soon as possible, or must it maybe perhaps it can finish no later than, or must finish on. All of these constraints essentially tell a project manager just how much flexibility and leeway a task has. And there are other options which we'll go into later on. But of course, probably the most useful one is the one that gives us the task name, how complete it is, a priority, which we'll go into later on, whether it's auto or manual scheduled, a start and an end date, and duration. Now, this one happens to be 0 days because I clicked on a milestone. That little diamond there is the symbol for a milestone. Milestones have no duration. They're simply an important point in time. But if I click here on that task, I see that this one has a duration of 3.6 weeks. This takes us pretty much to the end of the chapter, and you can see that there's one more thing that we need to look at on page 31. It's the project information dialog box, and that's on the project tab in the properties group, project information, and this essentially gives us an overview of the entire project. In other words, all tasks considered. The start of the project is here, the finish date is here, and very interestingly, it gives you a dialog. If you click on statistics, and you can see this on page 32, it'll actually tell you, well, this project hasn't started yet because the current duration is at 147.75 days, and that's how much is remaining. So this is what a project looks like from the start. It actually hasn't started to run yet. So when a project starts to run, you may not be making as much progress as you thought. So this may end up being current work, current duration expired, maybe 50 hours or 50 days rather, but you still have 100 days worth of work remaining, and you can see that 100 days remaining and 50 already spent means that you're already a few days late, because if things keep going the way they're going, you're going to end up spending 150 days on this project instead of the 147. Of course, there's a lot of ways to, smooth that out by hiring more people or cutting back on the scope if possible, or doing other things to speed up the project at some point. And depending on how close you are to the end, your options are greater or fewer as far as the kinds of things you can apply to shorten a task and therefore shorten the project. That is a quick overview of Lesson 1. Your job, of course, is to go through this step by step and follow each of the activities that are suggested, and then you'll find that when you do the projects at the end of the lesson, projects 1 through 1.6, you'll be essentially performing the kinds of tasks and activities that you did in the tutorial. As always, I'm available for questions by email. I look forward to working with you this term, and I hope that you enjoy the course. Please let me know. Thanks.